Welcome back to our College Costs 101 series. In lesson number 2, we're going to talk about cost of attendance, what it means and how to think about cost of attendance versus tuition, how to quickly find it at any college, and it can actually be harder than you think to find the cost of attendance, and then how to use cost of attendance, COA, and the averages for specific types of colleges in your search so that you know how this one compares to the next one and what we can expect to pay. In the third lesson, we're going to be doing some more digging into estimating your costs. So this is going to be a start, and this is going to build on what I talked about in Merit Aid. If you haven't watched that one yet, go back, watch it. It's about 15 minutes. It's kind of fun. I get pretty excited, and then come into this lesson. So cost of attendance is something that every college comes up with every year, and they come up with different costs of attendance, but the one that we're going to focus on is for the one that's going to apply to most of the families out in the College Bound Confidence community. For a first-time college student, a freshman, a full-time student, 12 or more credits, living on campus, okay? There are going to be some variations out there, I understand, but we're going to talk about that one primarily here. So cost of attendance is broken into two broad categories: the direct costs, the things that you pay directly to the university or college, and then indirect costs, costs which you're still going to need to pay for travel and some other things like that. So it presents a more accurate budget versus just what do I have to pay directly to the college. So if we look at the direct costs, those by far are the greater percentage of the total costs. And the biggest one that we need to focus on is tuition and fees. Sometimes colleges split it up and they talk about tuition and then they talk about fees. We're always going to be wanting to bring those back together for a couple of reasons. One of which is a lot of colleges have started to really increase the percentage of fees so that they can say, well, we've held our tuition steady for X number of years. Okay, but you've increased the fees by about $2,000. So it's not really saving me any money. So we're going to talk about tuition and fees. We're going to try to use an apples to apples comparison. You know, I hear a lot of families talking about, oh, you know, cost of college is this and cost whatever. And sometimes they're referring to actual cost of attendance estimates. And sometimes they're just talking about tuition and fees. Sometimes they're just talking about tuition. Sometimes I don't know what they're talking about, but I don't bother them. But you need to know that, you know, when I say, oh, it costs $10,000 to go to my in-state university, does it cost $10,000 to go to your in-state university, or is that the share of tuition and fees? So you need to know what you're talking about there, and we want to inform you. And we're going to be looking at how Merit Aid fits into the direct costs and reducing that as well. And the second piece of that is room and board. Now, I got to say, this is not the happiest news that I can share with you, but room and board costs, like everything else, have gone up. And in the 10 years that I've been doing this work, I used to throw out a ballpark estimate for kind of your basic dorm and, you know, full meal plan for the freshmen, eat all your meals, you know, on campus, et cetera. I'd say it's about $9,000 or $10,000. In fact, that's what I told my kids back when they were in middle school. You know, you guys are going to be paying for room and board, so here's about what you're going to need to come up with. And they know those numbers by heart. Well, I use a number now, a ballpark figure of $12,000, just because I've seen it increasing so much. And there are really three things that drive higher room and board costs. Number one is just your lifestyle. I'm going to be sort of the old guy that's whining about this for just a second, but colleges today, a lot of freshmen are stepping into dorms that are just amazing. It's what I call the luxury liner lifestyle, and you're living in a way that maybe isn't really accurate for being an 18-year-old and isn't accurate of what you're going to need to do in terms of your lifestyle when you graduate from college. And I got some problems with that, but we're going to hold off on that for now. But your lifestyle obviously is going to determine your room and board costs and the location. If you're going to college in New York City, in San Francisco, in a high cost of living area, it just makes sense that they're going to charge more for room and board. Everything just costs more, especially real estate. Location, location, location. One of the proudest moments of the college planning process with our older son, Jack, is when he decided to pull out his application from a school that was in Boston. It's a fantastic school, would love to have him gone there, but he knew he was gonna have to take care of room and board, and he knew it was gonna be north of $15,000 a year. And he said, Dad, that just doesn't make any sense, especially when my other schools are like, 8 or 9 or 10 at the most. That's just too much for me. I don't think it's worth it there. So he chose not to go down the path with that one. The selectivity of the college is also going to be a factor within that. What I mean by that is simply the private, hard to get into schools, and some of the public hard to get into schools, or just some of the bigger schools are charging more in room and board. They just have nicer facilities. The highest one that I've seen out there, sorry, University of Chicago, I love you. I think you're a great school, but you're quoting over $17,000 a year now for room and board. That's a lot. I don't know, you get a personal masseuse with that or something and your own personal chef. That's a lot of money, folks. So if we look at the indirect costs, they're quite a bit lower. Books and supplies, I usually ballpark $1,200 because that's the figure that I see the most. That's for 1 year of either renting books or buying books. If you're in a major, like something design or architecture related, or there's some other things where you're going to have some extra supplies and costs like that. But for most students, it's going to be somewhere in here. And this is one of the few things in college that's actually been going down, in part because of text rental. So you're going to see a couple today that are more like $800 a year, something like that. It's fairly modest. Travel, obviously that's going to vary a lot depending on if you're going in-state or close by, or you're jumping on a plane, et cetera. The only thing I would say is hold off on making a determination just based on, oh, I got to get in a plane, or it's really expensive to fly to this place or whatever. It might be, but let's think about, how does this fit into the larger budget? And until you have a budget, I wouldn't rule out any school just because, I've got to pay a couple $100 to fly there. Your personal expenses, that's up to you guys. You can eat ramen and live in a crappy apartment after your freshman year and reduce your personal expenses. That goes back to your room board as well. But that again gets back to lifestyle. So the number that I throw out, and it's a pretty aggressive estimate, is I say after the tuition and fees and the room board, so after the direct costs, add in about $5,000 just to be safe for your indirect costs. And that should cover things like cell phone if you're still paying for that, and maybe car insurance, things like that. Okay, so there they are, tuition and fees, room and board, and then the indirect costs as well. Let's look at some national averages. Okay, these are for last year, right? And they'll have next year, or this year's published next year. So for an in-state public university, let's just start with tuition and fees. We're usually going to be talking tuition and fees and then talking about cost of attendance, okay? The reason is tuition and fees are going to vary more than any of the other pieces. So if I want to know what it's like to go to school in, I don't know, Albuquerque, there's going to be more travel involved for me, but obviously I'm going to factor that in later. The main thing I want to think about is how does the tuition vary? So for in-state public universities, we're looking at just over $10,000 as a national average, and almost $26,000 as a cost of attendance, okay? In-state public university, UW this, UW that, whatever it might be for your state as well. If we go out of state, you haven't been paying taxes into that state, so they're gonna charge you more. You're gonna be paying $26,000 and often much more than that, depending on what school you're going to. Cost of attendance now, we're up to about $42,000, and you can see the numbers for private. Now, I'm going to show you an example of both a public and a private. We're going to dig into these a little bit more. Keep in mind that college pricing is kind of goofy. I mean, it makes the airlines look really transparent in their pricing policies, and private colleges do this high tuition, high discount model. It doesn't mean you're going to get half off, but we're going to talk about tuition discounting at a later date. And I'm going to show you some examples of kind of sticker shock and then the reality of what it could be. Here we go. Let's look at the University of Iowa, first of all. And when we look for cost and aid, we're generally looking under the admission tab, admission or admissions. And here we go, costs and financial aid. There we go, proud graduates. Okay, they are among the lowest in the Big Ten. Good to hear. Hey, next video, we're going to look at things like net price calculator, but for now, we're just going to go into estimated costs of attendance. There it is. Nice picture of, is that Old Main over there? Okay, here we go. This is the number. These are the numbers that we want to see. So we're going to go on campus for now. We're going to think about a freshman walking onto campus, dorms, full meal plan, the whole thing. Build expenses, same thing as direct, tuition and fees, and they bundle these together. $9,830. So I picked the University of Iowa because the in-state costs were really close to the national average. It's just about $390 if my math is correct, off. And then housing and meals, yeah, that's pretty close to that, roughly 12,000 that I ballparked. So there are your total build expenses. But I mean, there are going to be other expenses. And Iowa says, hey, we think you're going to need about $950 for books and supplies. We think you're going to spend $2,200 on, I don't know, going out or something like that. And then transportation there. So they're estimating about $3,800 for indirect expenses. Okay. And then if we go over here to the non-residents, you can see going to the University of Iowa, if I'm paying full price from out of state and my state doesn't have any kind of agreement with the University of Iowa or the state of Iowa, I'm going to be paying about $32,000 in tuition and fees. And that's higher than that. Do you remember what that estimate was? The national average? That's right, 26,000 out-of-state public universities. So this is about 6,000 higher than that. Housing is going to be the same, and they use just the same numbers here. Transportation might be different, obviously, if you're flying in or not, but those are some basic numbers. So that's cost of attendance for a public university, both in-state and out-state. If I go to a private university, first of all, there is no in-state versus out-of-state for private universities and colleges because they're not drawing in tax dollars as a huge source of their revenue. There are a handful of colleges out there that are going to give you a nice little discount if you're from one of the neighboring states. They're just trying to encourage people to come in to their university. But basically, we're just looking at one number here. So I'm going to go under admission again. And let's see, okay, financial aid, scholarships and tuitions, Ohio Wesleyan University. And I'm going to scroll past this and I'm going to go to tuition and expenses. Here we go. Okay, so this is the same thing. A first year full-time residential student, $46,870. So that's about $10,000 more than the national average. The activity fee, we throw that in. So we're basically looking at $47,000. And then if you add up the room and board, $12,800, probably have very nice food there and nice dorms. And they talk about standard rooms versus single, et cetera, but we're just looking in kind of broad terms here. So that's a big chunk of change. However, if we go under types of aid, and let's look at merit scholarships and awards. Remember we talked about these in the last video? Okay, Ohio Wesleyan, what do you got for me? Ooh, well, Branch Ricky's got something for me. Branch is going to give me $30,000 per year with a 3.4 cumulative GPA. That's your GPA when you apply. And a 23 ACT or an 1150 SAT. That seems pretty doable. Yeah, maybe I don't have to take this test again. Who knows? So 30,000. Remember, tuition and fees, 47, knock off 30. So now I'm looking at a great private university that maybe fits exactly like what I'm looking for in my University of U. And now instead of that 47,000, it's going to cost us 17,000. Well, 17,000 is still going to be more than in-state tuition at almost every state in the union. But that's going to be very affordable for many people who are going to set a budget to include not just whatever the in-state is, but perhaps a little bit more. And that's up to you, folks. You have to figure out what you define as affordable and what's value for you. But this is fairly good news, I think. And that shows an example of that high tuition, high discount model. And next slide, I've got just some stuff I pulled off of, I'm on their mailing list and they sent me something and, some facts about 97% of their students are receiving some kind of aid. If you want to search Money Magazine or Forbes or US News and World Report, there are a lot of places out there. Huffington, I think, everyone has their sort of best value colleges, and you have to dig into that a little bit more. But it's an interesting place to start, and maybe will open your eyes to some things that you may not have thought were affordable. When I see the total amount of aid, it's kind of like walking into the library at a college and they say we have 2 gazillion volumes. I just wanted a couple of books on Shakespeare. So I don't really know what 14 million means. I know I'm not getting all of that, but this other number is pretty good. 43,000, the average package of merit-based and other financial aid for first-year students. That's going to take a big dent out of that. So I would advise you to look past sticker price, at least initially. We're going to do that in the next video. And to kind of move beyond that to see what your costs might be as well. So I want to leave you with this. It might have been a little shocking in terms of looking at some of those numbers and thinking about multiplying all of them by 4, but I've got 4 cost of college cornerstones, 4 really important truths that I want to share with you, and we'll come back to these time and time again. And the first one, I believe this with everything in my heart. Every student can have high quality, affordable options. It's up to you to decide what affordable is and to decide that fairly early in the process and think about how things change or don't change throughout that. But you don't have to settle for less. We're not just picking the cheapest college because that doesn't always deliver the best value. We've all purchased things that were cheap and didn't work very well, which is not to say that paying less is a bad thing. But paying more isn't necessarily a good thing also. So you need to think about how the cost fits into that. And you really need to find what are the high quality, affordable options for your family. And this is everyone's job, okay? Dad or mom, if you're the one that's writing all the checks and you tell Junior, hey, we got this whole thing covered, you don't have to worry about it. I really encourage you to share some of these numbers with them, because if I'm writing out some really big checks, I may have some expectations in terms of, what you're going to do in terms of your GPA or how many credits a semester you're going to take. And I think it's good to bring our students in on that conversation. I've got another lesson for you about models of shared responsibility, determining who pays for what and when. And I think that's an incredibly important conversation that unfortunately a lot of students and families just don't have. I think you need to be open and talk about this. I think we need to keep things really simple in the beginning and use sort of ballpark figures like that until we start to know the numbers a little bit more. But the good communication is going to be really critical. Here, cost is not fixed. Merit Aid proves that. You can get rewarded for good grades, good test scores, other things as well. So don't stop at the sticker price. Dig in a little bit more and be a very proactive consumer. This is a purchase after all. And the final cornerstone, a great college education is a great investment. I can't think of anything that I can give to my kids that's going to be worth more over the long term. And it's not just these 4 years, it's what they get to do with that education, that time, experience, who they become in college. But the value doesn't start with that acceptance letter or the day I walk onto campus or when I buy the sweatshirt. It starts with your freshman year and beyond, and you start creating value through what you do as a college student. So next steps for both parents and students, I want you to kind of do some of this together. Look up the cost of attendance for a real wide variety of colleges, big schools, small schools, private schools, public schools, in-state, out-of-state, the whole ball of wax. Anything that you're considering, anything that you've been thinking of considering, anything that you're scared to consider. Put it out there. Take a look at the cost of attendance. I'll show you how to use the net price calculators and other tools to estimate your costs in the next lesson, but just start becoming familiar with that, okay? It is what it is. I don't like to step on the scale, but occasionally I need to actually do that for a dose of reality, and that's what it is, and then I know, and then I can do something about it. Learn those cost of attendance averages, 10,000 in-state public, 26,000 out-of-state public. We're talking tuition and fees. 36,000 private college or university. Know those numbers plus the cost of attendance numbers and have those ready so that you know when someone's talking to you on the sidelines at the soccer game, what's the truth and what's not truth, and you won't get freaked out. And then go on to the third video in this series, College Costs 101, Part 3, Estimating Your Costs. All right? We're all in this together. Good luck.